The plane lands in Da Nang, the door opens, and this heat rolls in, this incredible heat rolls in, which is a lot hotter than any place I'd been prior to then. And you're exiting the plane, and there's a row of troops leaving and a row of troops arriving. And the difference between the way we looked coming off and the way these other guys looked coming on pretty much underscored that, you didn't really realize what you're getting into, because these guys look very different, right? They look very different. These guys had jungle uniforms, and they'd been out in the bush for, a year, and it showed. You could certainly see that they'd experienced something. Something had changed these guys.
The U.S., they have all kind of, support. That time, they have a very good tank they call a M48. Nothing can hurt that tank. Besides that, they can use a bulldozer. They knock all the bobby trap and mine and everything down and to reduce the casualty. The Vietnamese have a lot of casualty because we don't have that kind of heavy equipment. I believe the Americans are gonna win the war very easily, because that kind of support, that kind of troop, and that kind of power. So I don't know why the war continue.
Marvin units, they weren't as well equipped as we were. You'd see these guys with a lot of World War II surplus weapons, still carrying M1s and Thompsons, and just not up to speed.
The military campaign, which ostensibly is trying to defeat the insurgency, is actually having a negative impact on the population because they're blaming the Americans for all the damage that's being wrought on the countryside. So I think that was part of the problem that you saw from a quantitative approach that folks like McNamara and others tried to place on top of a war that was much more about legitimacy and loyalty and relationships.
You can't do it by body count, and that's not how you win a war. Right? You win a war by, making the enemy unable to continue, not by killing their people.
You cannot kill your way to victory in an insurgency. You go into a village, even one that's basically sympathetic with the government, and you fire on some American helicopters, and they fire back and kill villagers, and you just converted that village. The Viet Cong very quickly realized this was a great recruiting tool.
Life is turned upside down for us, and even young girl like myself, we had to take a part of the war, and we fought against American, against the South Vietnamese, even though it's a lot of dead and wounded in our country. And so for them to stay and fight, that is only choice.
And the military does not build nations, The military kills people. Right, and it destroys things. It blows things up and it kills people.
Americans come in, we have to run and hide in a bunker. We try to be friendly, but when we're shaking, we so scared and run around and somebody else die. For Americans, see, Viet Cong is an enemy, it's an evil. To us, they're the Vietnamese. They are people. They are the villagers.
That tension between trying to build a South Vietnamese political community, or assist with that, and at the same time fight a war that was causing depopulation, that was causing great tragedy across the South Vietnamese landscape, that helped undermine what was a very comprehensive strategy. And all that had to be taken into account as you're trying to maintain support not only from the American home front, but also from the South Vietnamese home front, and also demonstrate that you're making progress.
The anti-war movement had kind of gone through what I think of as being a period where folks in the movement thought, well, we can just convince our leaders that there's been a mistake, that this was a terrible idea, and if they knew everything we knew, they would realize the errors of their ways. But that wasn't working. It was clear to them that the government knew full well what was happening and that they intended to pursue this war. And so by 1967, the movement took on a more radical turn. This was the period in which folks were trying to, stop the war by any means necessary. It was the year that they tried to levitate the Pentagon. It was the year that the resistance, the draft card burning and the draft resistance got started.
The staging area was usually Lafayette Park across from the White House, and I would, for a large demonstration, generally go out in front with a walkie-talkie and direct attention to particular areas if a large number were massing in a particular area. And of course, the residual fear would be that there would be some storming of the White House itself. It was even suggested at one time that we should electrify the fence, and I thought that was a supremely terrible idea, and it did not go forward. There were chants outside, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids have you killed today?" And we could hear it. We could hear it in the West Wing, and the president could hear it in the Oval Office. Even when nothing more was happening, it was just present all the time.